at the top. Details.
Should be open now.
Yeah, I see a couple of attendees coming in. We have Cami online. Hi, Cami. It was nice talking about Outer Banks with you earlier. And we have some other people joining us too.
And are you guys seeing the welcome slide here?
Yes, I am.
Great.
Okay, we'll start promptly in about 2 minutes. But in the meantime, let us know where you're coming from. It's always interesting to see who's attending, what states you're coming from, or where you currently are. So take a look at the chat. So yeah, that's correct. We're coming from all over. Got lots of people from Texas, Louisiana, Minneapolis, New York. I know the group of panelists that we have here are from kind of all over too. If you have questions at any time, put them in the chat. We'll stop periodically throughout the session too. And you can raise your hand. I can unmute you so that you can ask the question live if it's easier.
Hi, Lynn, it's Will. Should we get rolling? It is right at 2. I'm happy to wait another minute if you think.
Yeah, that's it. Let's get it started.
All right, great. Well, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us. We've got a great session for you today about testing and some of the accommodations out there. And this has all been facilitated by Dr. Elda Garcia, who's co-hosting with us. Dr. Garcia launched NATP in 2019 after serving as a district testing coordinator for nearly 2 decades. And a longtime member of the Texas statewide network of assessment professionals. She saw the support offered by a network of people who shared ideas and best practices. Seeing the lack of national or even state level assessment networks across much of the country, Dr. Garcia created NATP to facilitate stronger professional development for assessment professionals everywhere.
Thank you, Will. I'm happy to help bring this session to you today. NATP is working hard to connect with testing professionals across the nation to streamline the assessment process to really save us all much needed time and effort. to really simplify the tasks that over time have become increasingly more challenging. So as NATP, we actually accomplish that by providing our testing coordinator with resources. And that means really connecting you with the people, the information, the products, the services, whatever you need to really lighten the burdens of state mandated testing. As a district testing coordinator, I personally carried the burden of making it all work, right? So that for me meant I was going to surround myself with as many resources and people that I could to help me accomplish those tasks. So that meant I worked very closely with all of our vendors, with our departments, instruction, special ed, 504, bilingual, to meet the specific needs of all of our students, and which was really a lot of work. So I'm thrilled to be joined by our panelists today who will share their related frontline experiences to help us pull it all together as we discuss where we go from here. So I thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, we're thrilled too. We're excited to be a partner with NATP, and we have a long history. Kurzweil has a long history with the assessment community. Dr. Garcia is working with through the organization. Assessment professionals in some parts of the United States have been using Kurzweil for years, but often Kurzweil users come from other departments like special education, ELL, a variety of places. And so some of those states that NATP is active in are the ones in which Kurzweil has a lot of users, but not necessarily a strong relationship with assessment professionals specifically. Today, we want to show those of you who have Kurzweil already, how you can make use of this resource to streamline, using it with the accommodation, using the accommodation with assessments. And for those of you who don't have access to Kurzweil already, you'll see a great tool for making sure students have the support they do need. So one quick housekeeping note too, if you have any questions, please don't wait, put it in the chat. We'll be monitoring that. We'll try and answer you there, and we might bring you on to ask live as well. But otherwise, we'll start with Missy Tatum, Kurzweil Education Representative for Audio Optical Systems, Austin. She's been with the Audio Optical Systems and Kurzweil since 2007. Missy is an occupational therapist and assistive technology specialist who worked with students with special needs in public schools for 18 years prior to her current position. Missy.
Thanks, Will. So I'm going to start out with just a short PowerPoint just to kind of introduce Kurzweil, because I think there may be some folks on here who maybe aren't familiar with Kurzweil. I may have some people who are very familiar with Kurzweil, but want to make sure I meet everyone's needs. And again, I'm thrilled to be here. Thank y'all for including me. So again, I work with Audio Optical Systems of Austin, which has been a Kurzweil Education business partner since 1991. AOS is located in Austin, Texas, and covers the states that you see there. I personally cover Louisiana and Mississippi, but we cover Texas, Oklahoma, and Arkansas in addition to that. We've got a great team at AOS. You'll be hearing from Alex and Stephanie on this call, who are, of course, also part of the AOS team. So just to add a little levity to this, testing is stressful for everybody. And I love this little cartoon. Is this the test to test us for the test to see if we are ready for the test? And you can look at the anxiety on the students' faces and the teacher's face. And a lot of our students need accommodations. And so we're all familiar with some of the accommodations that are available to students. So, large print, changing background color, magnification, highlighters, text to speech, speech to text. You have a lot of different accommodations in addition to that, but that's just kind of a short list. And I think you'll see as we look at Kurzweil, a lot of those accommodations are available in Kurzweil. So I want to thank Dr. Garcia for helping provide some input on this slide because this is her wheelhouse. And so when you look at challenges for test coordinators, there are many. And this is just kind of a short list, but assessing all students in a timely manner. meeting the specific assessment needs for all students, determining and tracking appropriate accommodations, replicating computer-based accessibility supports, providing an assessment environment or platform that's intuitive and user-friendly, and giving students ample opportunities to familiarize themselves with online accommodations. So how does Kurzweil 3000 fit into this? Well, if you are someone who uses Kurzweil, you know that it's a tool that can be used during instruction to help students access content. So if they're a struggling reader and they have difficulty independently accessing their curriculum materials, those materials can be brought into Kurzweil and they can be read aloud. And of course, students have access to lots of other tools in there, which we'll look at. It can be used as a testing accommodation on just regular classroom tests. So teacher-made test, unit test, those can be brought into Kurzweil so that students can demonstrate what they've learned. Again, when they're using it on classroom tests, it's also helping students prepare for online tests that may have similar accommodations and accessibility options built in. Kurzweil is also built on universal design for learning principles. So just in short, Kurzweil is designed to meet the needs of that wider range of student abilities. And in some states, including Louisiana, Kurzweil is a tool that has actually been allowed to be used on our statewide test for those students who meet the necessary requirements. So there may be some people on this webinar who have no idea what Kurzweil is. So let's kind of start from there. Kurzweil 3000 is a literacy technology that can read aloud virtually any text. So at its heart, Kurzweil 3000 is a text-to-speech technology, but it's so much more than that. In addition to the reading supports, it also has a great suite of writing tools, annotation tools, vocabulary supports, and I think you'll see some nice test-taking supports as we dive in. Kurzweil is available in different types of editions or options available for different types of users. So we have a standalone option, a network option, and our web license edition. The web license edition, I think, at least, in the states that I cover, is the most popular with schools, school districts, and as well as in higher ed. And that's what we're going to be looking at today. We're going to be looking at the web-based version of Kurzweil 3000. So this is kind of a 30,000 foot view of some of the features in Kurzweil. So again, text to speech. It also has speech to text built in, a number of reference tools like dictionaries, a thesaurus, language translation, a variety of annotation tools like highlighters, circle tools, multiple note-taking tools, as well as a strong suite of writing supports like a talk and word processor, audible spell check, word prediction. We have 70 writing templates, which are fantastic. And then we also have some features in Kurzweil that can make test taking more secure, like password protection and feature locks. So for students, some of the benefits of using Kurzweil 3000, it gives them a level of independence that they don't have if they're having another person read aloud to them. So I think that independence is really important. It can also build their self-esteem because they're taking that test on their own. They're not relying on someone else to read aloud to them. One of the other things is consistent reading. Kurzweil is going to read aloud the same way every time. It doesn't matter how many times that student goes back and has something reread, it's going to read it the same way. And of course, the accessibility options that you have available in Kurzweil are going to be very similar to what students are going to face, you know, on a lot of the computer-based tests that they take. And then again, that password protection and feature locks is going to provide, you know, a more secure test taking situation. We went through the different states that we cover, and we created handouts that actually do it like a side-by-side comparison that shows accessibility options and accommodations in the statewide test compared to the similar tool within Kurzweil. And it's amazing how much they mirror one another. And I think Lynn is going to make the link to those handouts available. But if you want to just take a quick screenshot or take a picture of that, that link there, I'm going to show you Louisiana's, and I think Alex is going to be showing you the one from Texas as well, so you can see what we're looking at. So I'm going to go ahead and log in to Kurzweil. And are you guys seeing the login screen? Okay. And if any questions come up as I'm talking, please, you know, whoever's manning the chat, please let me know. So I just logged into Kurzweil3000.com, and this is our home screen. We call this the Universal Library. And you can see I've got a number of different users over here. I'm logged in as a sample teacher. You can see these users with the little orange icon. Those are students. So I've got 4 students on my team. You'll notice I put Joe Burrow on my team. Go Tigers! For any of you football fans out there. If I
yeah, I still see the, you know, you asked if we were seeing the login screen. I'm seeing the picture of the login screen on your slide. I didn't realize.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So.
I didn't know if it was just me.
You seeing the login screen now?
We are now, yes.
Perfect. Thank you so much, and thanks for letting me know. So I'm logged in here as a sample teacher, and then here are my students below with the orange icons. If I click on my name, my login, I can see that I've got these 3 folders: private, public, and recently opened local files. Anything I put in my public folder, my students can access. So that's one way of sharing content with students. But I also have the ability, let me get my little control moved over here. I also have the ability to copy and move documents from my folder to my students. If you look over here on the top, I have a dark mode option. This puts Kurzweil into a high contrast setting. That's just based on user preference. Some people really like that. Some people like the regular view. Below that, you are going to see different locations from which you can open documents. So Google Drive, OneDrive, Bookshare, and your computer. So for our purposes, I'm just going to go open a document that I have saved on my computer. And the document happens to be a PDF. It's something that I downloaded from newsela.com. When you're opening a PDF in Kurzweil, you have an option of determining what page range you want to open. So for our purposes, I'm just going to open this whole document. But if you had a 100-page document, you may want to open 20 pages of it. And so you have the option of determining what's going to be opened. And right now, Kurzweil is going through and processing that page or that document. And it may be running a little slower than usual just because we're on a webinar and have a number of different people on it. So here's the document. You can look down here and see it's a 5-page document. I can scroll to wherever I want to start reading, click and get my cursor anywhere within the document and click on my play or read button.
For almost a week, one of the world's key shipping canals was blocked by one of the large.
So that button is going to turn my reading on and off. It's highlighting one sentence at a time because that's the way I have it set. If you look here under audio options, this is where I can change a lot about how Kurzweil reads. So I can select a voice based on, my preference. I can speed it up or slow it down. I can determine what chunk of text is highlighted as it reads, and I can also click the reading mode. So let's just listen to Sharon read.
Ships at sea, with millions of dollars in trade delayed amid frantic.
Okay. If you look here under your document view options, this is where I can change a lot about how Kurzweil appears to the user. So one of the accommodations that we talked about earlier when I was showing the PowerPoint is large print or zoom. Well, if I uncheck fit width, then I can manually adjust my zoom. And again, this may move a little slower because we're on a webinar, but I can go anywhere from 300% to 25%. So again, I can customize this based on the needs of the user. One of the other accommodations that you often see on the computer-based test is the ability to change background color. And so, of course, we, within Kurzweil, we have that option. So, I can select from, I think, 8 or 9 different background colors. So got kind of a blue, we've got some, reddish, peach and rose colored. We've got several different grays, yellow. So again, very similar to what you will see on some of the computer-based tests. If a student gets to a word they're not familiar with when they're reading, they can click on the word and come over to the reference menu and access a number of these different reference options. So if a student needs a definition of a word, they can pull up the dictionary. Of course, I can have that definition read aloud.
Canal. Noun.
It's going to default to the American Heritage 5th edition dictionary, but some users may want a less complex definition. So you can pull up the Children's Dictionary and get a much simpler definition, or the College Writers Dictionary, or even a picture dictionary. So you have different levels of support built in for your students. And again, those may be features that you would lock out in a test-taking situation, but if you're just accessing content, certainly you would want to give your students access. You have a built-in thesaurus. Again, I can have that read aloud, but just another way for students to learn word meanings. You'll also see that language translation is located under the references menu. So if you need to translate text into other languages, you select the text that you want to translate. Go select translation. I'm just going to translate into Spanish. I think that's probably the language that we need the most in Louisiana. And I can read that translation aloud.
Durante casi una semana, Uno de los principales canales de navegación del mundo fue bloqueado por
Kurzweil translates into it. I think it's more than 70 languages. The ones at the top that are in bold are the ones that we can read that translation aloud in. Just briefly to go over some of the tools over on the left toolbar. Students can drop bookmarks into documents. And right now, again, we're just using an article that I downloaded from newsela.com, but it could be a test document. So if you have different sections in a test, a student might drop bookmarks to navigate to questions that they need to go back to, or different sections of the test. Here are your highlighters. Again, very similar to what students may see on a computer-based test. So, you know, in this case, with this article, I might highlight main ideas or supporting details. Might highlight some vocabulary words. Okay, any number of things that a student might highlight. Another accommodation that students have available to them on many of the computer-based tests are sticky notes or text type notes. Within our note menu, you'll see sticky notes, text notes, and bubble notes. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about sticky notes. Alex will talk to you about bubble notes and how they use them on the STAAR test in Texas. Bubble notes are really cool though, because you can add all kinds of things to them, including vocabulary, but you can also add things like multiple choice, true, false, short answer questions, and embed those in a document. I'm going to just drop a sticky note in here. Sticky notes are pretty self-explanatory. I can drop a sticky note anywhere. I can move it around. I can resize it. Of course, a student can type into it.
I can add notes.
And I have mine set right now so that it speaks as I type. I don't have to have it talking as I type, but that's just kind of one of the writing supports that we have available. And then, of course, the student can go back and listen to what
I can add notes.
And you also can dictate into sticky notes. So here's your speech to text. I can dictate, period. Isn't that cool? Question mark. So, you know, the speech to text works, you know, very simple, very user friendly. And I'll just delete that note. So I'm going to go back to my universal library, back to that home screen. And again, if I wanted to share this document with my students, I could put it in my public folder, or I could go here and copy it to my students' folders. I'm going to go open one of our practice tests. One of our statewide tests in Louisiana is called the LEAP test. And I'm going to go open the 4th grade ELA practice test. When I open it, or when I attempt to open it, you're going to see that I have applied a password to this document. So this is one of the test security options that's available in Kurzweil. So I applied a password to it, and unless I know the password, if I put the wrong password in, I'm not getting into that test. So you can, you know, put a test in a place that students could access it, but unless they have the password, they're not going to be able to open it. I also locked some features on this test, and I'm going to get a little window that's going to pop up and tell me that. So this document contains features that have been locked, and I used the feature lock option that locks features to a specific, to the document, okay? So I'm going to pull up the thumbnail view of this practice test, and you're going to see it's a 90-page document. And of course, the student can start reading this
Today,
test.
you will read a passage from Emergency on the Mountain and the poem.
In Louisiana, and this changed a few years ago, in Louisiana, if a student has read aloud or text to speech as an accommodation for their high stakes test, if they have that accommodation, the entire ELA test can be read aloud, including the passages. That's going to be different when Alex shows you Texas. And Alex is going to show you a tool that allows you to essentially have those passages read silently. So the student can have everything else read aloud, except for those sections that they're not allowed to have read aloud. I'm just going to quickly turn pages and get to the questions. And so when a student gets to the questions, of course, they can have the questions read aloud. And they may use a highlighter to go in and, highlight keywords within the question to help them as they're reading that question, to identify, exactly what the question is asking. As they read the question or the possible answers, they might use this cross-out tool. Again, very similar to what they're going to see on some of the computer-based tests, to go in and cross out some of those questions, just some of those possible answers using process of elimination. And then they might circle their answer here with one of the circle tools. Or they may be doing that on their test booklet. They may be answering on their Scantron. So there are lots of different ways that students may use Kurzweil in a test-taking situation. And see if there was anything else I had on my notes to cover. I think that's it, unless there are any questions. All right, well, Alex, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Perfect.
Well,
And
just as a
oh
quick,
yeah,
so audio optical systems, I mentioned earlier when introducing Missy. It's a family-run business that has worked with Kurzweil since 1991, and Alex, who you're about to hear from, has been with the company since 2015. Does a little bit of everything involved with Kurzweil, whether it's training, technical support, or attending conferences. So, Alex, take it away, please.
Yeah, thanks. And so Missy did a pretty good job kind of showing you overall what Kurzweil will do, what it's all about, just kind of a nice little overview. I'm going to expand a bit on some of the things she talked about, and I'm also going to dive into a little bit about what makes Kurzweil unique for us here in the state of Texas, particularly the STAAR test. So let me see real quick, Missy. I'm going to start sharing my screen. Okay, so hopefully everybody sees my screen now. Will or somebody confirm you guys can see me logging in right now? Perfect. So I'm actually going to log in with the same login that Missy was just using. So it looks familiar. We don't change it up on you. Everything looks exactly as she was showing you. So what I'm going to do is open up a document that I have made. I've got it stored in the private folder right now within this NATP folder. And so this is a little sample document. It's 3 pages long. It's going to show you what a reading page looks like, a writing page looks like, and a page from a math test. And what I really think makes Kurzweil unique to handle test taking, particularly these state mandated tests, is because there are so many intricate details. I'm speaking for Texas. I'm sure every state is this way, but there are so many details about what can and cannot happen on tests, particularly when we're talking about accommodations. So Missy said on her ELA test in Louisiana, if there's read aloud, then the student gets to read everything. Well, that's not necessarily true for everything here in Texas. So if I've got a reading test here, the accommodations say that the student can read the directions out loud, or they can have the directions read out loud, but they have to read the passage on their own. When they get to the next couple of pages where the questions are, those questions can be read aloud. But again, that story has to be read silently. So I'm here on my first page. This is a reading test. So if I push play, put my cursor down here.
Read the selection and choose the best answer to each question. Then fill the answer on your answer document.
When it gets down to this story, it's going to continue highlighting, but it's not reading out loud. And the reason that it's important for us to do it this way is because it does still highlight this text. And as you can see, I move my cursor over that text and you see these little blue boxes around everything. That means that all of that text is still accessible. It's still underneath this document. So one of the reasons that that is important is in Texas, we have pop-ups. And Missy kind of alluded to this when she was showing you the notes section of the toolbar over here. This bubble note, that's what we use in Kurzweil to simulate pop-ups. And so pop-ups in Texas can be anything from just a simple support, clarification of a word. It could be a definition, it could be a picture. There's a lot of different things that get put in these embedded supports within this document. So this text is silent, but I still have access to it. So maybe I want to place an accommodation or a support or a pop-up here for the word India. And what I want to do for the word India is, let's get a definition first. So let's just say in this pop-up, in this support, I want to have a definition, and then I also want to have a picture support. So we'll say, all right, I like definition number one. I'm actually going to use Kurzweil to get this definition. And I'm just doing a Control-C. I'm just copying this definition because that's what I want to put in my pop-up. So I have my cursor before the word India. The word India is highlighted. Either way, that's where it's going to place the bubble note. Come over to notes, and now I click on bubble note. This menu pops up, and this is what I can place in this support. So maybe I want to call the support India. I don't have to necessarily type anything up here, but I'm going to paste my definition down here. There are a number of different options over here on the right. So again, every state's probably going to be different. If you do have these types of accommodations, these types of pop-ups or supports, in Texas, we have to uncheck this, open while reading. So what that means is it's reading text to speech, it's highlighting along through the text. When it gets to that pop-up, it's going to skip past it. It's going to continue reading. The student has to actually go click on the pop-up themselves. So what I want to do is uncheck open while reading so that it's not going to automatically just open it when the text crosses that note. There's a couple of different options here for questions. So right now you see I have no question checked. I could ask a true or false question. I could put a multiple choice question in here. I could add different answer choices. Type the answers in here. A student would be able to bubble those in. Let's come back up here to no question. We're just going to keep this one simple, and I'll click save. Now you see this little purple question mark. That is what is going to indicate to the students that the teacher has placed a support there, or that there is some type of pop-up there and that they can take a look at it. So remember I said I was going to do the definition, and then I also want to put an image in there. So I'm just going to come over to Google Images, and let's just get one for India. So we'll choose this really great picture here. And I'm just going to do a right-click copy image. Same idea for when I copied the text to paste it into the bubble note. And now once I hover over that, I can click on Edit. Let's skip down a couple of lines, and I'm going to paste that image in there. Now I click Save, and when the student comes to this pop-up in the text, they say, okay, I see that there's a pop-up there. I'm going to click on it.
India, a peninsula and subcontinent of southern Asia south of the Himalaya Mountains, occupied by India.
It'll read that out loud to me. You can also embed text in these images, and I'm going to talk about that once I get over to the math page, because I think that's sort of the most common way that we use it or that we talk about it when we're training schools is sometimes you may have a complex formula and you want to put that into a pop-up, but you don't want to have to type out up here everything that's in that formula. So I could actually hide a caption in the image. It would read the formula out loud and I would just see that image on the page. And I've got one of those set up on our math page for you to take a look at. So we'll close that out. And I'm going to arrow forward to the next page, which this is an example of some questions on a writing document. Just like in the page you saw before here, this little section for a writing document is an extraction from part of the story from a previous page. And so that cannot be read out loud either. I've got that set up to read silently as well. And actually, let me pop back over to this page. I was going to show you this before I set this bubble note up, because once I do it, it's going to ask me to take it away. So I'm going to delete this bubble note real quick. I was going to show you how I made that silent. And that's going to be in this tools section of the toolbar here. I have two different ways to sort of manipulate what I want Kurzweil to read and how I want it to read. So the first thing is the zone editor, and this is how I determine what I want Kurzweil to read, and it's also how I made that zone read silently. So you see on this page, I have two zones set up. At the top, I have the directions in its zone, and then I have the stories in its own separate zone. And then outside of these zones are the footers or headers or anything you might not want Kurzweil to read out loud. So those are outside of a zone. Kurzweil won't even see them. It will not possibly recognize that as something to read. If I click on this top zone, so it's highlighted here in purple, I see that there is this option over here called read silently. That is not toggled on my directions. So those are going to read out loud. But once I click down here on the story, now I see I have toggled that green. That's how I make that zone read silently. So anything that I don't want to read out loud, I keep in that zone to read silently. So I apologize, I meant to show you that before I talked about the bubble note. So let's go back over to this page. Again, that same thing I did with the zone specifically over just this little portion of text, so that will read silently. And then some of the other ways that bubble notes are used specifically in this situation for a writing test is they refer back to a paragraph. So this question says the author included paragraph 2 to most likely show. Well, the support here for paragraph 2, I didn't type anything out, but you'll see
Paragraph 2 text here.
you could actually paste paragraph 2 right here in this bubble note. So as you probably imagine, well, hey, you said earlier that sometimes things can't be read out loud. Well, if they can't read the passage, if they can't read paragraph 2 out loud from the previous page, we don't want them to be able to read that out loud in a bubble note. That's where I would basically just take a snip of that paragraph. I would create an image of that paragraph and paste that in my bubble note. Then the student would be able to read that bubble note on their own and it would not read out loud to them. So that's kind of just a little hack that we use to simulate that if that's an accommodation. I'm going to move over to this last page. This is a page for math. So you can see there are some different things on this page that you may want to read in a very specific way. So there's a lot of fractions here. If I place my cursor down here, I have made these fractions read a certain way. Instead of saying 2/4, I believe I've made it say 2/4. Let's see.
2/4 plus 2/4 plus 3/4 equals 5/4.
So I forced it to say that. I forced it to say 2/4 plus 2/4. And the way that I did that is going to be that second part of this little tools menu that I mentioned before. You've got your zone editor and then you have your edit underlying text. If I click on that edit underlying text button, that shows me everything that's underneath this image document. And this is where I mentioned that I think Kurzweil is really unique in handling testing situations because, I made it say 2/4. That may not be the way that it's supposed to read on a test, but I just wanted to do that to show, hey, I can make it say anything that I'd like. I've literally gone in here and typed the words 2/4 plus 2/4. I could just as easily write, 2/4 plus 2/4 plus 3/4. I could make it say anything that I wanted to, whatever that particular test needed, the accommodation for text to speech to say. In Texas, we have, it basically dictates and says that the greater than and less than is too much information in a math test or in a math equation, right? It's sort of giving away too much information. So on the STAAR test, greater than or less than has to actually read as symbol. So I could come in if there were any greater than or less thans on this page, and I could come to my underlying text here and actually type the word symbol. I could click on one of those, like the word items here, and I could type in symbol. Doesn't change anything about the image, but if I were to, let's see, scroll down here, and now I've got the zoom thing in the way of it, but so I can save here, exit out. Do I want to save the changes I've made? Yes. So if I come down here and play.
Of.
Well, let's not highlight just the word of.
Cost of these symbol.
It said cost of these symbol, because I changed the way that read underneath the text. So just, I like showing that because you can basically make any document, any test, any quiz, anything that you're doing in Kurzweil, you can make it read exactly how you want it to read, regardless of what it shows on the page. I know Missy said that her state does some of the editing on their state mandated tests, and I know she's mentioned, for example, if something has a graph or a map, the state has actually gone through and typed in the underlying text, just like I showed you when I changed it to symbol. They've actually made it say, this is a map of, the United States. The y-axis says this, this, this. So just, it's really customizable. You can really make it say anything that you would like. So let's come back up here to this bubble note. Remember, I mentioned the application for putting a hidden message into an image. So this bubble note that I've placed here kind of will show you what that looks like. So when I click on this, it's going to have a math formula, and it's going to read a picture of a math formula. It's going to read that picture of that math formula, but you're not going to see any of that text.
Use the theorem below. A squared plus B squared equals C squared.
And so I've actually gone in and typed that into that image. And the way you do that is you click on the image that you have pasted into this bubble note, and you have a caption, an image caption down here where I can then type that in. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. And so we'll close out of that. Let's come back to this universal library really quick. One thing I want to mention before I move on to the next thing that I'm going to show you. I know Missy showed you some of those feature locks, the way that you could lock some of those features to a document specifically. She pulled up that state test for Louisiana, and she had the dictionary locked out. If you have certain students who have different IEP requirements, and you don't want to lock all of those features for just one document, I can come into my account here and select users, and then look at my team and go to team feature locks. And now see, I have all of these different options on how to lock those features out. So for the example of the dictionary, I could click on references, and maybe it is just Joe Burrow that doesn't need to use the dictionary for today's test. Maybe it's, it's Friday and we're doing the STAAR practice test, and only Joe out of my entire classroom can't use the dictionary. So rather than making that feature inaccessible for that entire test for everybody, I could simply come in here and lock Joe out of that dictionary. So I just wanted to kind of show that really quickly before I move into the next thing that I want to talk about here. And the next thing that I want to talk about is going to be a read the web toolbar for Google Chrome and Firefox. So I already have it installed, obviously. It is going to be this little Kurzweil logo. So if I click on that, let's actually navigate over to a website here. So we'll do Wikipedia first, and I'm just going to look up something about, so say I'm doing some research here, and this is going to be a very simple application for how to use this, and then I'm going to show you what it would look like in a test taking situation. So if you were utilizing some type of testing platform that was not a PDF or a document that you could upload, it was a separate testing platform out on the web. We'll look at that, but I just want to show you the tools in a very simplified way here. So if I'm looking at maybe the Wikipedia page for NASA, and I want to have some of those Kurzweil features here on this Wikipedia page. I've clicked on that little Kurzweil logo, and this is super simple to add from the Chrome store. I mean, it's like a instant add basically. I've got it on here already for simplicity and time's sake. And I'm going to actually use the exact same password or username and password that I used before in the website Kurzweil3000.com. So now I have a much more simplified little toolbar here that hovers over my web page. So now I just click down on the page and hit the read button.
The National Aeronautics and Space Administration.
And it'll be, you'll see I have a few of these features that Missy showed you over in the website. So if I wanted to get a definition of a word, maybe space, I could highlight that, click on my dictionary button.
Space. Noun. Mathematics.
I have those same options to choose a simplified dictionary or a college writer's dictionary, and I have a thesaurus here as well. I have all of the same audio options that Missy showed you, so I could speed this up, I could slow it down, I could change it to self-paced, paragraph sentences, and so on. Change the voices. So let's look at translation. That's the next thing on the toolbar here. Maybe I want to translate this whole paragraph. I highlight the whole thing and click on translation, and it looks a little bit different. But you see now it says speech supported, whereas I don't know if you noticed when Missy showed you, only those speech supported languages were in bold. They're spelled out a little more simply here. Kurzweil is saying, hey, here are the speech supported languages. So if I choose Spanish.
La Administración Nacional de Aeronáutica y del
I can start reading from there. The last thing on this toolbar is an image reader, which is a pretty awesome new feature that Kurzweil built into the toolbar. And I wanted to show you like a much more practical way to use that. So the really nice thing about this image reader is I can take a snip of something that is not accessible with this toolbar. So whereas I can click down here, you see my cursor is placed here on April 15th, Thursday. I could start reading from there, right? But maybe I need to see what this, what the words on this thumbnail for this preview of this YouTube video say. Well, that's where I can use this image reader tool or screenshot reader, however you want to refer to it. And I can just draw a box around this and say, all right, this is what I want to read. So what that does is it actually converts and brings it over into Kurzweil3000.com. And then I can hit my play button.
Official stream.
And we have a way different voice here.
Official stream.
of NASA TV.
Okay, it read that way because it must have recognized official stream as French because that switched to a French voice. But I'm able to actually snip something like that, something off of the thumbnail of a YouTube video that obviously I can't just click on and have it read. I use that image reader or that screenshot capture tool to bring that into Kurzweil3000.com and still have access to that text, still be able to read that.
Hey, Alex, it's Will. I just wanted to chime in. We've gone a little bit long, so I wanted to let you finish, but then
Sure.
make sure we've got a little bit of time for Dr. Garcia to talk a little bit more about NATP.
Not a problem. Not a problem. I've got like one little last thing to show. It's perfect timing. I've got about one more minute here for you. So remember I said that's a more rudimentary way to look at the read the web toolbar. That's kind of a practical, like I'm doing some studying, I'm looking at websites, but I mentioned wanting to be able to use that for an outside testing platform. So I can't actually log into one of these testing platforms with a Zoom meeting going and all of these other things running on my computer. So I had done a little video, a little screen capture of an example. This one is actually the Accuplacer test. So these are some preliminary questions when I've accessed the AccuPlacer test. And so I'm just going to play this video for you. You'll see that I've got the Read the Web toolbar up here. And so I'm just clicking down.
What is the total number of years you studied English in high school?
Click down there on the text where I can then have Kurzweil read that. If I wanted to read some of the answers, I could select one of those, place my cursor there.
1 year.
Have it read that answer to me. And then the same thing I just showed you over on Wikipedia, I can get definitions.
English. Adjective. Of, relating to, or character.
As well as translate any of that also. So same thing you just saw me do on that Wikipedia page. Here's what it would look like when I am using it within one of these online testing platforms. And Will, if you want, I'll hand it back over to you and we can take any questions. Dr. Garcia, if you have anything else you want to add, I'll just kick it over to you guys.
Yeah, Dr. Garcia, well, thanks to everybody for joining us, but I wanted to thank Dr. Garcia for this fantastic opportunity to work with so many assessment professionals. And for attendees, please don't hesitate to reach out. But Dr. Garcia, can you tell us a little bit more?
Yeah, sure. No, I'm actually just happy to be here. I appreciate the audience kind of hanging on. And for me, I just kind of wanted to close by making kind of the connection, you know, between all that you're seeing here and the efforts we make with NATP to just provide more information and resources to testing coordinators across the country. Because all that you're presenting really is common ground. Like Missy mentioned earlier, the challenges that we have as testing coordinators are very similar across the nation. So I think we're going to find a lot of that commonality. Now, to Alex's point and Missy's, you're going to see some variation from state to state. And that is where I really appreciate the customization options and the kind of the different variations that you have available, which I think will be very useful as you start to kind of expand Kurzweil across the nation, is really kind of highlighting the options that you have. And now that's just not applicable to as you move across the nation, which it will be very applicable to, but also in any given state. As we assess the independence or the progress of a student, we want to start turning on and off those features, right? So we want them to become more independent readers. So that means we're going to have to see how they're doing with or without a support. And that's part of the accommodations rules. And so we want to make sure that we're challenging them, we're encouraging their independence, and Kurzweil options allows you to do that. So I think that's also a very applicable, you know, in our testing space as we continue to challenge our students and assess their progress, particularly in these times where we're trying to see and figure out where they're at in light of the given circumstances and the summer slide, COVID slide, all that you're talking about. We're trying to figure out where they're at. This is going to help us get there. So I really do appreciate that about the tool. The last thing and the last connection I want to make is really all this conversation across the nation about the evolution and kind of the transition we're going through with assessment. There's a lot of conversation about how we can assess our students other than the state summative assessment. So this tool helps us kind of prepare students for what they're going to see on the final summative. So to Missy's point about familiarizing students, this is important for practice, but also as we consider alternate ways to assess our students. The conversation about the relevance and the importance of more frequent testing, common assessments, benchmarking assessments. This is all going to become very applicable and a great resource for our testing coordinators across the country. So I really do appreciate the demonstration today, the tie to kind of how we can support the frontline efforts to just put students in the best position possible to be successful. So I want to thank everyone for joining us and thank the team for sharing with us yet another resource that can support our assessment communities nationwide.
Fantastic. Well, unless there are other closing comments from anybody else, I wanted to let the attendees know that the recording should be available, I believe, tomorrow with captions. Lynn, correct me if I'm wrong there, but everybody should have a link to that. And thank you again for joining us.
Thank you all for joining us.
All right. Yep. Recording tomorrow with captions. All right, everyone. Thanks.